I always give credit to Liefeld saying that, look, when he does know comic history, and when he decides to be Rob Liefeld making observations, that's fine. When he decides to do that Robservation stuff, when it's the world according to Liefeld, which, it's his show, he can do that, that's when it's very disappointing.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Spinner Rack. I'm here with the boys, PD and Cal. Say what's up, gents.
What up?
Ready to rock.
Hey, today we're talking about Doctor Strange, Robservation. He's talking about the creation of Doctor Strange. Who is the one behind it? I don't think there's much controversy on this, but there has been some issues with it over the years. I'd like to just play the Robservation, a part of that, about what he says about the creation of Doctor Strange. Selector, please play.
Right, we just have audio for this. There's no video.
Yes.
Over 40 episodes, okay? So here's the deal. Stan, in the comics reader in 1963, published by, I'll tell you right now, Jerry Bales, B-A-I-L-S, okay? Says straight out, okay? He says, you ask for some future plans. This is Stan writing in the comics reader. Well, we have a new character in the works for Strange Tales, which is where Doctor Strange is going to debut. Just a 5-page filler for a character named Doctor Strange. Steve Ditko is going to draw him. It's got sort of a black magic theme, reading directly from Stan's typewritten statement. The first story is nothing great, but perhaps we can make something of him. 'Twas all Steve's idea. And I figured we'd give it a chance, although again, we had to rush the first one too. Little sidelight, originally decided to call him Mr. Strange, but the thought of Mr. was too similar to Mr. Fantastic. Now, however, I just remember we had a villain called Doctor Strange just recently in one of our mags. Hope it won't be too confusing. Oh well. Right there, I have it highlighted. The first story is nothing great, but perhaps we can make something of him. 'Twas all Steve's idea. Okay. Again, a group of retailers were shuffling this around, and you sit there and you go, Doctor Strange, the movie that we saw is came to us past Steve's death, and Steve Ditko very much protested in every possible way that both Spider-Man, which we've covered a little, and Doctor Strange was completely his creation.
Okay.
Why is he getting you mad then, PD? Give us a heads
No. Let's well, I don't
You gotta compose that anger. We gotta do this right.
Okay. My issue is not that it's not true. It is definitely true. It's the statement he said after that. The statement that he said after that is that Steve Ditko has been yelling and screaming, this is not his exact words, that he created Spider-Man and Doctor Strange by himself. And he did not do that. When he left Marvel, he left Marvel. He said nothing. It wasn't until 1985 when Jack Kirby said that he created Spider-Man. He only spoke about creation when Jack Kirby said he created it by himself. And then Stan and Jack gave it to Steve to work on. And Jack Kirby's proof was like, look, I drew the cover, I designed it, then we gave it to Steve Ditko. Steve Ditko said, that cover is the second cover. Stan rejected my cover. Jack did do a 5-page story, which was rejected after I said it sounds like The Fly. So me and Stan came up with other ideas. So there was different, this was more involved than the 5 pages that we were doing and this, that, and the other. So then at the same time, when Stan has said that he created something by himself, when he said he created Doctor Strange, that's when Ditko wrote in and said, no, Stan said at this point, twas Steve's idea, right? So he said that, and then I think at some points where he took Spider-Man by himself, he just wrote it and said no. He said that he created the when he plotted the lifting the machinery. Stan had said that, well, I wrote a plot that was only for a couple of pages, and Steve expanded it, and And Steve Ditko wrote back in saying, no, in that period, I was plotting. Me and Stan wasn't talking. Stan cut me off around issue, I think it was issue, I think it's 18, but I started getting plotting credit around 25. And I think the machinery thing is around issue 33 or something like that. So he said there was no point where Stan would have given me a plot for it because we weren't actually talking during that period. So he just corrected. But then we also have these articles. Oh, damn, I got to turn off this thing. This is terrible. My lighting is so bad here.
Just tell us about the article.
The articles talking about the comic industry. It points out some of the stuff that Stan says, and it compares.
What articles?
It's all these self-published thing by Steve Ditko. These packages, which he called these comics, or sort of art things of these magazines, which have articles from Steve Ditko that was packaged from him and Robin Snyder. They put together this thing, and basically he would talk about the comic industry in general, talk about some of the stuff Stan said, and basically that's where we get the article where Stan Lee wrote he considered Steve Ditko the co-creator of Spider-Man. So there was no point where Steve Ditko wanted sole credit. And actually, he didn't want to do anything with Spider-Man after that. He was like, they tried to get him to do it. He was like, no, I don't want to do it anymore. He was like, he didn't want to be compared to what he had done before. Obviously, as you're older in age, you don't want to just sit around and try to compete with, hey, it's not as good as what he did in the first place. There's no way to do that. So ultimately, in the package, the 32 tisk that he did, he compares the comments that Stan said, but he has a scale saying that looking at what's that thing, Doctor Strange and him, their creator, he has Stan there as a part in Doctor Strange. He doesn't take him out. Same with Spider-Man. So it's like he hasn't gone and said, I want sole credit for anything. That might be on the other side of Jack Kirby, but Steve Ditko didn't want to talk about it at all.
Let's not bring in Jack Kirby's name in this. We're talking about totally Stan and...
No, I'm not going. That's not off the beaten path.
Yeah, we're going off the beaten
path. No, it's not. Because if we have someone that's saying that he did everything and Stan did nothing, and we have another creator saying that, hey, he has a bunch of his other newsletters saying that, hey, all these early issues, me and Stan, Stan would talk, Stan would give me a plot, we would talk it out, we'd work on this stuff, and then Stan would give me his issues, I would give him my issues, and that back and forth, we'd have on the book. Like they really had interest in making this book successful and that sort of thing. So it wasn't like he was just doing all these things to say how bad how bad Stan was. He was just saying they had difference of opinion, and Stan Ditko would like to sort of discuss it. So I don't like this thing where people just go in and say, well, when he said he created everything, he didn't do that. He didn't want to talk about it at all. And he left it. He didn't want to do any more Spider-Man. When he came back to Marvel, he would do anything else. And they would try to slip in some Spider-Man stuff. And he would say no. And the same with Doctor Strange. So my thing is just, sort of taking Ditko and turning him into the guy who was just, going out there and saying, Stan did this. He basically said his issue that Stan just stopped talking to him. And that was it.
So you got anything to say, Mars, before I get in this?
So yeah, I just wanted to confirm. So the creator of Strange was Ditko and Stan Lee.
Oh yeah. Say what you're saying again. I was about to jump in. I didn't know what you were going to say. My mistake.
You thought I was going to say something to left field. All I'm just confirming is you agree Ditko and Stan Lee were the creators of Doctor Strange, right, Petey?
I believe, yeah. I mean,
and as well that Stan Lee was the creator of the rest of the Marvel pantheon.
Whoa! Didn't you just say that we weren't going to go and conflate and bring a whole bunch of additives in, and now you're trying to do that with this statement? We're just on Doctor Strange, Stan Lee's contribution, Steve Ditko's contribution. Those are the parameters that you set, and that's where we're going to stay.
But that's what I said.
Yeah, you see, I couldn't even bring up Kirby.
That's well, I'm saying, well, then let's say all the other work.
Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, Stan Lee, and Steve Ditko, or Stan Lee and anybody else you work with, are always going to be different scenarios because it's different. It's just a different dynamic. The only constant with any of them, Stan Lee. That's it. This situation, however, is just a little bit different because Stan already acknowledges that the idea begins with Steve Ditko. So this isn't like a situation where like, hey, I came up with Spider-Man and so on and so forth, and Stan might contend. He already said, no, this was the initial idea comes from Steve Ditko. It's 5 pages, so on and so forth. But this is a character, I know people don't really like to do nuance too well, but there's a difference with a character that's created by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko and a character that's created by Steve Ditko with Stan Lee. Because this character sounds like, all right, he already has the basic ideas of what the character was supposed to do. And from what I've read and from what I've heard, Stan comes in and applies more of the finishing touches, more of the story ideas, the name. So it's not a complete work of Steve Ditko. Stan Lee does help in the creation of it. It might be 80% done by the time he gets to Stan, it may be 90% done, but Stan Lee does have a hand in the final creation, the creation of Doctor Strange, and without a doubt, okay, that classic run of strange tales that happens with all those stories and the other characters that come in there. So that is the way that I've always looked at it. But this is the only situation that I know of. I don't know if there are any others that really apply. But this is like a character where if I'm working on a character and I got 80% of the character done and somebody else comes in and finishes it off, well, I would say it was created with them as opposed to it was created, by me or by the both of us. Like we both created the character from the ground up. Superman by Joe Shuster, Jerry Siegel, Doctor Strange, Steve Ditko with Stan Lee is how I would always approach it. Now, the trouble with that, nobody really does nuance. Everybody just wants to know, everybody wants a yes or no answer, who did it, so on and so forth. So taking that, and I'm pretty much going to throw it all out the window, it was created by the both of them because you can't get, even if it's 95 and 5, it's still created by the both of them. And then you can argue as to how much somebody created or what percentage of the contribution was one person or another's, but it's still created by the both of them.
Yeah, and I think I said that. I agree with you 100%. So there's no controversy then, gentlemen, that once again, like we're just following us, say Doctor Strange was created by both Ditko and Stan Lee, and that Stan Lee created the Marvel Pantheon. So I think we have...
That's a totally another show, man. You talk about the whole Marvel Pantheon, and you're kicking up dust over here, and you're going to start people with some flame war at the end of the day. We're just talking about this, okay? We're just talking about this. I mean, if we wanted to go into the Marvel Pantheon, there's a whole bunch of characters nobody cares about that Stan Lee had a hand in and probably created on his own, including that Doctor Strange villain that he says, oh, what about this guy over here? Okay, nobody's arguing about those type of things. We're just talking about this right now. Please don't make trouble, okay? I can see the smile. Please don't make trouble. I think we can really do a good job with this. We can just finesse this one and move on, and everybody learns something, and we don't have to go over here like Steve Ditko was some victim, like Rob Liefeld was trying to portray him out to be, or he was jumping up and down, hot and mad, and so on and so forth. That's not the history either. I think we're in a good place. Can we please stay there, Mars? Can we please stay there?
I would only say there's a slant to this going into, because he also mentioned in there that he mentioned Kirby in the Robservations, saying Kirby won, Kirby won the suit, where it's a settlement similar. No, well, not similar, but they basically had a long trial. I think basically Neil Adams, kind of talked with the Warner Brothers people, and they figured out a number that was good, which of course has increased over the years. I think trying to bring in this whole thing of, like who created what, and it's kind of going to the slant of Deadpool or those guys, and then Cable, characters that were introduced with one a scripter. Deadpool was introduced with Rob plotting and Fabian Ascenzer being the scripter, and then you have Cable, who was someone on Rob Liefeld's sketchbook.
And Louis Simonson.
Louis Simonson wrote the story, and I think obviously obviously Rob went his own
Chris
way.
Claremont.
No, but he didn't really have too much. He didn't have any. Claremont didn't have anything to do with Cable. But basically, they wanted a command. They wanted a more of a drill sergeant, and they looked through Rob's thing, and they picked out Cable, and they picked out a bunch of characters that were on there that they were going to do stories for, similar to what Dave Cockman did with the original X-Men. But they wanted to do that, and Louise added some stuff to it as being the writer and saying, "Oh, we'll use this character." And that's not strange for Marvel to be like, "Hey, I want to use this idea. You still using that idea?" The same with the growing costume. That was something that was going to be introduced in Iron Fist, and then Roger Stern said, "Hey, I'm thinking about using that for Spider-Man," and that became the alien costume. But this became for Rob being like, "I did this stuff. These are my creations. I created it," and he's kind of doing this slant to say, "Hey, see how an artist can come up with an idea." And Steve Ditko was fighting mad, saying how much he created this stuff and like turn it into, what was Steve, where Steve was like, no pictures, no nothing. I don't need to talk about this stuff unless you take the credit away from me. So I just think there's a slant to this, which I don't think is necessary. This thing has been in print. Steve Ditko has already replied when Stan had said that it was Doctor Strange was his creation, and it's all handled, and no one has moved back, no one's taken from him, no one's trashed him after Ditko said that. So, or another thing that's like, oh, here's the same like people find in the Monster Times where Stan Lee said Kirby plotted and did stories for the Fantastic Four. Like, we've got this thing that is not an archaeological dig. It's in print. The fact that people didn't do the research to find it isn't.
It's on Wikipedia.
Yeah,
That is true. That is true.
It's not even that. It's not that hard to. I mean, literally, it's so easy to find. You can just wiki that. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
It's not a deep Google search. It's right there.
Except for you downplaying the fact that Chris Claremont helped to create the Nathan Summers character.
You're going on that thing. See, that's the thing. That goes into another thing, because I think Eric Larson said that the plan was that Cable was going to be. They had a different origin for Cable, but the money factor into connecting Nathan to I don't know, but Robinson said that was his plan initially, but I don't think it was. I think Eric Larson said it was a different character that the Cable was going to be. But I haven't read it in so long. But now, I guess you can, since they had the long line of Marvel sort of creation, and Nathan Summers is a creation of Chris Claremont. I have to give in. What can I do? It's a classic saying that you got to put everyone in there. I stand corrected. But see, who wants to take the sole credit for it? Rob. He always planned for it to be Nathan Summers. He always planned that.
Well, we all know Rob is going to be Rob.
Yeah, I mean, and so listen, in that observation, he mentioned quite a few different things.
Yes.
Moon Knight, he touched base on the whole thing with, of course, it was supposed to be who created Doctor Strange, but the very fact that he also went on to Kirby and the issues that he had with, he kind of touched on that.
Tell us that stuff.
Oh, I mean, no, you can clearly say that, but the point is, I'm
saying tell, because I don't remember. I didn't get to listen to that part. He was just about to say that after that passage. That's when I got incensed.
Was that before or after the base intro?
No, I mean,
that's when I had to crash. I crashed the car when he said the Ditko thing, and I was just like, just go out and buy a Ditko pack. And it's like, what do I got this stuff here for? I got these great articles, these things that've been sitting in John Hanley's universe. If you know that comic store, they've been sitting in there for like years. And it's
but the question that really comes out is that, I mean, like the very fact that, and I'm going to go back to this again, saying about Stan Lee being the creator of the pantheon of Marvel. The very fact, while he may not have written every single thing, the very fact that he was the editor, pushed it, was a great proponent of it. He wrote about it in and spoke about it wherever he went, made him sell. He was the main salesman for this whole Marvel stuff, regardless of whether some people say, well, he had no, if he didn't write it, if he didn't like edit it, then he really didn't have anything to do. And I totally disagree.
No, that's ridiculous, because we just did a show like we just touched on this with Mort Wessinger, where an editor's reach is like octopi. Okay, they got their hand in everything. I'm giving you the plot. I'm directing this. You can be a writer. You can come up with a story. It could be a great story. If the editor says it's not going to fly, it's not going to happen. Okay, you create a character. They're like, hey, well, I created this character. No. Editor doesn't want it. Doesn't happen. Okay, but the big difference with Stan Lee is that Stan Lee is the rare. I mean, there's no other person like him. He was the only person who was literally. He was the master of ceremony when it came to Marvel. Otherwise, nobody would even know this guy. He was a guy. He was like you just said, he was such a big spokesman when it comes down to the whole thing. And these people are like, oh, well, if he didn't write it, he's the editor. This guy had control over more stuff than the average person can imagine when it comes to the execution of these things. And they want to distill this to that. Well, did you actually write? I'm like, no. Most of these things, I mean, there's like stories with him and his brother, Larry, where Larry Lieber would come up with something, or he did some story ideas, and Stan was like, this is trash. You can't do it. He's like, no, we're not running any of this. We're going to do a reprint in this issue or something of that nature. You got to take this story back, work it all over again. So what does that do? If you have a story idea and the editor says no, forces you to go back, rewrite it, helps you rewrite it, gets it to the point where it is, and then you publish it, it's still your story? And that happens all the time. That still happens. You know, it was such a sausage making fest at the end of the day, with how the style was at that point. Now, of course, everybody's a lot more protective. Oh, because this could be the next big thing, which it isn't. But this could be the next big thing, so I got to make certain I have my hands all over this. And that was not the case, and that was not how the way that it worked in comics. Golden Age, Silver Age, Atomic Age, Bronze Age just didn't work like that. And Rob Liefeld, I'm certain he understands this. I always give credit to Liefeld saying that, look, when he does know comic history, and when he decides to be Rob Liefeld making observations, that's fine. When he decides to do that Robservations stuff, when it's the world according to Liefeld, which, it's his show, he can do that. That's when it's very disappointing, because he can come across do some really good show, like when he did on Bucky, and the usage of Bucky over the course of the years in Marvel universe history, that he wasn't just dormant character until the Winter Soldier. Ace, kudos for that. But then he'll come with this, like, no, man, no, that's your slant at the end of the day. It's not fair to Ditko. It's not fair to Stan, and it's not fair to you at the end of the day. Just, if you got a perspective, okay, but don't come and give us this slant where people are going to run off like somehow, Ditko was jilted or he never got credit, when a 5-second wiki search will take you right there to a fat quote showing exactly what it was that Stan Lee said back in 1963.
Well, I'm going to say, sorry. That's that part. Well, that you kill me with the observations in comparison to Robservations, but that the thing that he also talked about was he started in with the Joe Casey stuff, talking about America Chavez being in Doctor Strange, and the fact that he signed a deal that ultimately doesn't lead him to get that much money out of the character, which we've talked about before. And he talks about there's a sentiment growing, but he brought up some sort of sentiment where people are like going at Joe Casey, and it's just like, no, let's stick to the sentiment of, at this point, of signing a deal and then changing your mind, saying, hey, and then he's not only did Joe Casey, he created his own with Image around the same time, saying, all right, I don't got it, I'm going to create my own character for Image Comics. And the fans should have went with him, with the creator, but they're like, no, now Marvel's doing it. All the people going this way. But I think the slant that he's trying to go is that this negative thing against Joe Casey started going happening around. And now I don't know about that, but at the same time, there is a sentiment, which we said, is that if you sign this deal, then at this day and age, when you can take these characters anywhere, which he did. He did a mock version for Image, and Image would publish, and ultimately Image would have published America Chavez from Joe Casey. He's enough of a name to get a title, but that's also ultimately, the chance of dying on the vine where it doesn't do anything. You're just like, well, here's Joe Casey's Code Flesh. Joe Casey did all this great stuff. He did Children of the Atom. He's done Cable, this, that, and the other, but no one is going crazy over Code Flesh. They republished it. It was a Charles Allard, the guy who did The Walking Dead. That shouldn't that be a hit? No, it doesn't turn into a movie, nothing. But it's like, not to say that it's bad, but it's just like, you can die on the vine on your creations, and you don't have to sign at Marvel. And that's the only thing I think we were trying to say, and I think some people are trying to say. There might be a negative thing saying, hey, that it could be, maybe that's going too far. Maybe Marvel or Disney should be nice and give him, and they did give him, but he obviously wants some sort of participation now. They did offer him some money, and he kind of was like, no. And then now he's kind of, they had an article about it. But I think kind of slanting it that, hey, all these guys are attacking the creator. He's the creator. And it's just like, okay, let's first say the sentiment started out as saying this. And let's just not just go to the slant of saying, let's stick to where it is, where it's that you signed this thing at a stage where there was so many places to take your ideas and not get stuck into the Marvel thing and still turn to, hey, Marvel, do the right thing like Kirby. Like, no, that's totally different. That's totally different. Like Kirby, Kirby was also, as Cal was saying, was a workhorse. So it's like, I think when they were thinking that they needed to make new characters, that's why you see in the Fantastic Four, they were making new characters. And they were creating characters that, these characters might be in their own book. The Inhumans in the mid-'60s, and maybe the Black Panther and such, and they go, oh, no, we're not going to get that shelf space. We don't need to do it, and that sort of thing. So they kind of pulled back, and the only thing that came out was I think the Silver Surfer and whatnot around that time. So, it's a thing of trying to draw in all this stuff of the, it's obvious, it's easy to do the evil creator, evil company, the David, the creator that got nothing. When it's like you go into the deal, there's Image. He's already worked with Image. He's worked with all these other companies. It's really hard to immediately turn everyone into Kirby and say, how could they do this? How could they do this to Siegel, Schuster, Kirby, and Joe Casey and Ed Brubaker? How could this happen? Like, there's places to go. It's not, people talk about Image. You have Image. You have the Image guys who gave you the
at that time, yeah, you have. It's not Joe Shuster and Jerry Siegel. It's not 1938. Sorry, 1938. You have other places that you can go. I keep reminding listeners that there was also a concerted movement against these guys that they were not going to create new characters for Marvel, or they were not going to give their best ideas to Marvel or DC. They were going to save those for their independent works, and thereby, like an independent music person, they were going to get all their money instead of having to get a point system with the record company. And also would remind people that the comic books is not the record company. It's not as sleazy, nowhere near it. Yeah. But it's also to remind, that's something that I think Rob should bring up. Liefeld created, I don't know how many characters this guy created. Once he found out that he could get a percentage, he was just creating characters. Okay,
and he created a lot of characters that were very, derivative of other characters. I'm sorry to jump in,
but still, but he could still take it as his. Like, it's a parody, but it's still mine, right? Okay, we all know the foundation for Deadpool. Everybody knows it. Everybody knows Wade Wilson. Everybody knows Wade Wilson, Slade Wilson. It shouldn't be too big of a deal for anybody to put this, but it's still his character.
That's criminal, though. That's criminal.
Hey, it's criminal. It's criminal. It's not cool. But he played by the rules as they were set at that point. Can't be angry with him, and have to respect the fact that he said, "Hey, if on the chance that one of these characters hits, I'm good." And so once he realized that, he created his characters. I don't know what happened, because that was a situation in the 90s where these guys were doing this. And then you get to the 2000s and nobody's doing that any longer. They're not getting that sort of deal. And I'm like, okay, fine. But then nobody knows in 2006 that by 2022, Marvel's going to be making billion-dollar movies every other week. So the whole idea is like, no, I'm going to do these sorts of things. Well, that's what you did. And these are the things, that happened afterwards. so on and so forth. Everybody was an adult, knew what was happening. But to slant the whole, go back to this Ditko, don't slant this stuff. Don't try to make Ditko out to be some voice crying off in the wilderness or something. It's all documented. We know what the situation is. Just, if you want to comment on it, fine. You got your opinions on it, fine. But let's not slant the actual situation as to what was going on.
My last bit on Ditko, in here, everyone says that, what's the name? Who's that guy? Martin Goodman owed him money. In here, he says, I never talked to Martin Goodman. I only heard through Stan. It's like, he said, hey, why are you doing the Sergeant Fury book, Stan? And he's like, oh, Martin asked me to do it. That's what he said. Nothing happened unless Martin said so. But he didn't have any, he said he didn't have any connection to him. So it's just like people say, no, he went and he wanted his creator percentage from Martin Goodman, or else he wouldn't work for them. And it's like, no, he didn't. I think ultimately he did the idea of the page size changing, and he wanted to stay like in Charlton, the page size was still pretty large, so he wanted this. Also, that was one of the other things. His leaving Marvel was very, what he described it was like, hey, just making the decision that and having to go through go-betweens like Flo and Sal Brodsky saying, it's like, we haven't talked in a while, so let me just go. And he just kind of exited. He did it. It's one of, I think it's not the comic, it's the comics, this article by Robin, this newsletter by Robin Schneider, where he just basically talks about making a decision after the second annual to kind of bail on it. So, but it's not anything about create my books, my money, they got it. So anyway, that's me. Mars, I think I cut you off. Anything you want to add in there?
Yeah, there's just two more things a little bit separate from both of these. One is that Rob made a couple of different observations while in that particular podcast. So number one, well, not number one, but yeah, let's say number one was that he was saying that you shouldn't be running after comics in terms of prices, because he was talking about how Moon Knight, the price, went pretty crazy, he said, and that he suggested that you shouldn't buy it until, a couple of months afterwards, because by then the price will probably settle. But he said you should focus on buying what is that you're interested in and the runs that you want. What are you guys?
Oh, well, hold on that. So Cal, what do you say to that?
What?
About not waiting out to buy those books. Wait till you find out if it's a hit or not.
Good luck with that. I mean,
he said in one of the other ones that, hey, he had, he bought most of those Captain Americas when he heard that they were going to do a John Walker, and he bought all of those things, and the numbers skyrocketed when the TV show came out. Why would he tell you to hold off?
That's what he said, bro.
Now, if you're going to buy Moon Knight because you want to collect it or you want to sell it, you're in a tough position, because now this is peak period right here. There's a show out, there's interest, such as there may be. Expect to pay more money. What if you were looking to buy it before? Hey, that was great, because the prices were rising towards the show. And then, yeah, you'll probably see some drop off once the show is done. But if they choose to continue on with Moon Knight as a character, you're going to have a pocket where, okay, say like the Boba Fett show, where the Boba Fett show wasn't very well received. At one point, I think a graded copy of his book was like, it might have been like $1,200, $1,500. People thought the show sucked all of a sudden, and that's the sellers, because the sellers are now like, oh, I got to get my money. I got to get my money. So they start slashing the price because they're trying to move this thing at the end of the day. They don't want to get stuck with it. So like, okay. But Boba Fett is always going to be there as a character. He's still a very much fan-loved character. Everybody will give him a second chance. And if they decide to use Moon Knight further on, those books are still going to be there. So I don't know how much drop-off you can expect, but, most of the guys like me are just going to hold to their price, because they're like, hey, this isn't the last time we're going to see this character. This is not the Daredevil movie from the 90s where I got to get this money now, because, hey, we already know this is like we never know what's going to happen. You expect to see Moon Knight again and expect to have to pay some money for it.
Interesting. All right, so
what was the second part? Yeah, the second part after that.
But I'm saying just so the point, Moon Knight, he was just giving the example, but anyone basically should be following the stars that they want, as opposed to his point was that people are like, oh, this is going to be in the movie. This is going to be in the movie. This is why you got to buy it. And he's like, well, you never know. A lot of those are hit and misses, and therefore you can't. So we can't fault him on that type of logic, right?
Yes, we can fault him on that type of logic. If you're buying for the numbers, you're buying to be a seller. You got to buy beforehand. That's what he was saying. He said earlier when he was talking about John Walker, if you're interested in keeping it, yes, don't try to jump in on and try to read the comic books while this book is hot as anything. Don't just wake up.
I'm not sure what he's saying, because on one hand, he's playing the speculation market like everybody else. He's like, oh, I saw a thing, John Walker, I picked up these books. He's not keeping that stuff. He doesn't care about it. That's not original John Byrne art. He doesn't care about that. So he's going to sell that stuff as soon as he gets, it's like penny stock. All right, I got in. I'm going to wait till it appreciates to the right amount for me, and then I'm going to dump this stuff. That's pretty much where he's at with it. Okay, that's fine. But if you're advising other people, it depends on what they're doing. And if they're speculating like you, then yeah, they need to get in very early and then know when they're supposed to be getting out. If they're buying to collect, that's something different. I can't tell somebody when to come. You say, look, if you're buying to collect this stuff and you're planning on keeping it, then yeah, you try to get it early. But if there's going to be interest and this character is going to be viable, at some point you just got to buy it if you really want it. And the trouble is that a lot of these comics are just laying around. You got stuff with classic stories, classic art that you can get. You could have gotten a whole set of JLA versus Avengers. You could have got that for $20, if that. You probably could have gotten it cheaper, depending on, because there was a lot of copies of it. And then, we hear about George Perez. His health he's terminal, and the next thing you know, sets are $250. So unfortunately, with comic books, the interest in comics of comic readers does not drive the price of these books. The interest to other people outside of comics tends to drive the price a lot more. This character is going to be in a movie. This character could be the next big thing. This character could be the next Superman, Spider-Man, whatever it is. Got to get this book now. Got to get this book. Because otherwise, these books have been just sitting around for years, for decades. And then you have a character like America Chavez. Nobody cared about her. Okay, until they thought, hey, wait a minute, she might be the next big thing. And then with the movie, yeah, a lot of stuff happens. It spikes, it skyrockets, and people look at it as a good investment. So that's pretty much where it is. If you are looking to be a collector, that's a different track. You're looking to speculate, that's a different track. But the one thing that I will tell you, comic books are not like those prices that you're seeing. That's not determined by comic readers. It's not, because if it was, those prices would have been there a long time ago. That's determined by the interest of people coming into the comic market thinking that, yes, this is something more viable than what comic readers thought it was.
Thank you. So, that's exactly, and I'm glad you brought up the whole America Chavez. So that was the second point he was making about, he didn't know anything about America Chavez. He didn't know about many of these different characters. So he says, he reads, but he basically doesn't read everything.
Well, why are we listening to you? As Kyle Reese said to Rob. So sorry, keep going. I just had to do that joke. I want to go back to the penny stocks too. That penny stocks one, that was a good one. Sorry, keep going. I apologize.
Well, that was the point that he was just making. And it's hard for comic book readers right now to keep on top of every single art, every single character and story that's going on. First of all, there's so many comics out there. There's so many.
Oh, please, they're lazy. It's not that hard. It's not that hard.
How much
I do it.
You read all of them?
I do it. You don't have to read all of them. And even back in the day, I didn't read all of them, and I could still figure out what was going on between Marvel Age, talking to other people. You wasn't that hard to sort out what's going on. And Petey knows I've been on record. I'm not an X-Men reader, and I could still tell you like the top 10 plots that were going on at the time. It's not that hard. Okay. Collecting comics was not just about collecting the books that I liked. It was about immersing yourself in that universe, right? So I may have read Superman. Sure, that was the gateway into the DC universe for me, but I still could tell you about all these other characters based on the interaction that they would have with Superman, these particular events that were going on. You didn't have to read every single book, but you did have to immerse yourself in the universe. And if you're not willing to do that, then yeah, it's going to be really hard, especially if the only reason why you care is because the character's about to make an appearance in a movie, which is where they are at the end of the day. These cats don't fool me, right? Come on. It's not that hard.
Well, I would, this is in definite agreement of if you have interest, and I understand he doesn't want to look to the public that, hey, I don't have any interest in America Chavez, and that's the thing. If you're interested, what you're interested in, you go and check out. What you're not interested, you don't read. That's the only way to describe it. Or else, hey, there's too much stuff. Not if it's something I'm interested in. Like that's the thing. Now I think Marvel's doing like these. They're doing these. I always kind of check out when the thing is out there. They ended one series and now they're doing a Hulk. Well, no, it's not going to be a team up, but it's going to be the guy from the Matrix is doing a thing series. I guess it's going to be another 6-issue thing. So I might check it out, but that's the thing. It has to be something of interest for you to kind of check out.
What guy from the Matrix?
Huh? Steve Scrooge.
Who's the guy from the Matrix?
Steve Scrooge.
Who's the guy from the Matrix? Keanu?
No, Steve Scrooge, the artist who did the what's the names? The art, one of those guys that work with the Wachowskis on the what's that Ecto Kid and whatnot, and he did Wolverine and he did Gambit, a bunch of things. So he's doing a mini series, or I don't know, they're leaving it open ended now. Now they're doing new number ones, but not letting you know it's a mini series. So it's but that's the thing. If you're interested in, if he's interested in it, then check it out. I don't, for the way this type of books and stuff he does, that's not a female character he would have created or have any interest in. So, I mean, obviously you got to be honest about this thing. He's into everything in Marvel. He's watching all the movies. He's still talking comic books. He sees when someone else is doing something. He got the finger on the pulse. And no America Chavez. That's because you're not interested. It's okay.
That's like me with DC right now. The majority of the stuff with DC, like I could care less about it. But then they come, we're gonna have Dark Crisis. Like, oh, another Crisis? I'm there. Okay, I'm there, and I'm pretty sure when I read that, I'm gonna get plugged into a whole bunch of other stuff that has happened. And then in terms of interest, because I want to understand that more, I'll probably go and read some of the other stuff so I can get on. That's all that it is. These guys are talking more about speculation. How can I know who's the new character and the first appearances and all that type of stuff? And even that, they've really distilled that down where you can go with YouTube and they can tell you every week. You can go to websites and they can tell you every week. These are all the first appearances for the week. You don't have to read a damn thing. Just have the money.
Yeah.
Good, Mars?
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I mean, I still think that it's still, there's a lot out there. There's a lot of media that people have to consume, and there's a lot of stuff that have to happen. So look, we're not going to belabor this point, but just wanted to bring out those couple of points from Robservation. So I mean, if you really like what Rob is saying, I suggest you listen to Robservation. He does bring out some interesting points. He is a little controversial on some of the points that he makes.
You have a check with Rob too? He's getting a check from Marvel. We don't have to worry about his check to Marvel. I mean, sorry to say, I've already been in one argument with him online. I'm not going to worry about him coming here and flipping out, or he could just hash it out. There's nothing. What terrible he said.
And I was in one tentative argument with him years ago, but it didn't go too far, thankfully.
All I pointed out is Ditko isn't the guy saying I totally created characters by myself. Never said that.
And I pointed, he did a cover for Wolverine. He did a cover for Wolverine. I said it was an homage of that Incredible Hulk cover that Todd McFarlane did. And he was like, no, it's not. He was like, that cover's been done before. He's like, that cover's been done before, well before Todd McFarlane, this, that, and the other. And I was like, yeah, okay, but I'm pretty sure nobody knows that. It's gonna be Incredible Hulk 340, the Todd McFarlane one. But hey.
Wow. Which cover he was saying it was done from?
Oh man, I'd have to go back and look at it again because I really don't remember. I really just put it out of my mind. Once he said that, I made the connection very quickly that I forgot Rob and Todd don't get on, so the last thing he wants to do is say that he's homaging anything to do with him. So I was just like, oh, okay, I get it.
The guy said he only did 10 in his New Mutants thing. He only did 10 homages to other creators, and I think that's obviously why he has issue with Peter David. He's like, I forgot about the double page spread that he took from George Perez, and George Perez did a thing on CompuServe, complaining about swipes. So it's like, I know everyone, Gentleman George, but at the same time, he wasn't too keen on the idea of swipes or regular swipes, that sort of thing. So
Gentleman George was still ready to throw down. And throw down for the right thing.
But he said it probably in the nicest way. So, but anyway, sorry, you were closing the show out, and you were giving him his accolades for the creations of so many characters that people love, like Cable and Deadpool, which have been very successful for Marvel, right? He did. He created that stuff, or co-created that stuff. We can't say co-created, or else we'll get in trouble. We'll get attacked.
I don't know what else to say to you two. I'm just dying. So listen, everybody, if you like
I'll say this and then we can close out. I don't like it when people come across with comic book history. Like, this is some recently discovered stuff. Like, people never knew about it before. That people like me, people like Petey, we were not interested in more than just the four colors and the panels on the page, that we didn't have some actual intellectual interest in the creation and the goings on of the hobby and the medium that we frequented on a basis. There were all of these, and I've said this before, there were all of these comic magazine journals that, articles with the creators, all this stuff. We consumed a whole bunch of that stuff. So for now to come like, oh, well, here's something you didn't know. Now I knew that already. Tell me something I don't know. Okay, I'd be really happy for that. Tell me something I don't know. I'm really interested in that.
Yeah. That's I don't know. He's given if you look at it, the way he's doing it, it's really, he's really, captured it. Like, it's really, even though it's like he's not obviously the best, but he has the voice is decent, and he's entertaining. He brings in the stuff with the family, this, that, and the other. When
you really believes it.
You get to those details. Well, I think when I talked about him talking about George Perez and Byrne, and how them were basically George Perez like, I'm leaving DC, I'm leaving Marvel so I can fight for Byrne from the other side, so I don't have to clear the playing field. Where it's like, I think when Perez got the Avengers back, Byrne was drawing it, and I guess because he was in the office, they just gave it to Perez. They asked Byrne recently why didn't he continue on Avengers. Like, they just stopped sending me scripts. So, that's how I got off the title. Like, it wasn't any big thing between the two of them. He didn't look at it like that. And it wasn't, hey, Byrne is X-Men Byrne. Like, I'm and running George out of town. It's like that sort of thing. So, yeah, that's kind of how we would do it as kids, where we feel like Prez is just beat down Byrne with this issue of New Teen Titans. Look at the Baxter issue compared to the Alpha Flight, where it's just like that stuff. And it's like, no, he actually was going through some health issues, and that's what happened. That's why you see this. There's so much to get into, but it is definitely entertaining. Not to say that it is. He does. It's not all fictional, but it's like, it's heightened. It's very much heightened, and it's entertaining because there's stuff we talked about with Jim Shooter talking about the second Spider-Man and Superman crossover. So Superman and Spider-Man. You listen to that. We're talking about stuff that Jim Shooter has never talked about within his own blog, where he said his struggles with DC, which probably led to Shooter kind of pushing, like hurting Avengers JLA. But say what you said again. I keep complaining about it. You're out there buying a $3 million this thing. You should have already had it if you're a Perez fan. If you're a collector, I get it. But it's out there. It's already out there. Everyone should have bought this thing. It's like he just drew every character. Even if you don't get into the story, you got Perez drawing like everybody.
You had the original 4 issues. You
Yes.
had a trade paperback that came out years ago. And then you had that deluxe treatment. And the thing you have to remember, anytime that's published, that's a joint Marvel and DC thing. So you got to hope Marvel and DC getting along is like New Edition touring all together. You got to hope the stars align and everybody's in a good mood at that time to get it done. And they got it done no less than 4 times. No less than 4 times. And the time that you decided to get in on it was the most expensive one. The most expensive one. That's your issue, not theirs.
And the other thing is that this one I waited forever to buy, the Crisis one. But at the same time, it took me a while to get.
Hold that up. No, like, because you put right there. So everybody get art on that. That I got that on my bookshelf. Mm-hmm. Art on that is beautiful. And for years, I've got that and there was a hardcover that came out before that with like a small panel error. And
Mhm.
I got that signed by Perez a long time ago. Well, not a long time ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And I was always debating, like, and that's where you are as a collector, because I have both of them.
Mhm.
And I keep saying the Absolute is better. I should just get rid of this other one because Perez signed it. And, I could probably make some money on the whole thing. And I sit there and I mean, this is one of these things that keeps you up at night. It's like, what do I do? What do I do? I don't want to. I said, I know I'm not going to find that again, signed by Perez. I'm knowing that's never going to happen, but I don't really need it on my bookshelf. I could give this up and give some space. That's when you're a true collector at the end of the day. It's like, look, I got this bevy of riches right over here, and I don't know what to do with it. But that Absolute one is the definitive version, without a doubt. Okay, and if you read that and you enjoyed it and you don't have the Absolute version, you have no excuse. Okay, I understand that wherever you are, they may have had comics in a 25-cent bin and you were spoiled for 20 years, but that means you had all that money you could have saved up for something big like this, and you didn't do that. Okay, so all the money comics allowed you to save, you didn't put it together to give back to something that was really good, something that was high quality. You took that money, you probably threw it on some girl who didn't like you in the first place, buying a new edition tickets. Okay, and as soon as she got to the concert, she went off with the security guard. You should have took that money and you should have bought some good comics with it. You saved enough.
Well, I want to bring this back home to what we've been talking about because it does relate. It does relate to say that you guys are historians, right? And you don't go to one source for the information, you go to many. So don't just go to Rob's, it is entertaining, and then keep researching. If you want to know more about stuff Ditko said and his feelings, go out there and read Avenging Minds because he talks about Doctor Strange and he talks about plotting it and how Stan was writing it, and then Stan gave it to other writers to do the script and whatnot. And then he's like saying, hey, why don't you just let me plot it? I can do that. He talks about that stuff. He talks about a bunch of different things. So it's like you got his thing. Don't hear from someone saying he's just out there flipping out. So there's historians, and you get that bug when you first hear Stan Lee talk about the creation of Marvel, and then you read more, and you hear Kirby's side, then you hear from Roy Thomas, and you hear these articles and all that. It's the same like getting into history. So you don't just stop at one, you go and keep trying to add more.
Roy Thomas should always be your stop. That should always be a stop on your information train, because there's so much you can gain from reading the stuff that Roy Thomas wrote. And he was there. He was there at the end of the day. He's still alive. He can still speak to a lot of it. He was there. He should still be there. So, he should be one of your stops. It should not be that, hey, I'm going over here. I like what Rob has to say. I like how Rob delivers this information. That's cool, but that's tuning into Rob Liefeld for a podcast. Okay, that's not being a historian of comics. Be it a novice, okay, an amateur, whatever it may be. That's not it at all. That's just going in there, listening to what this guy says, taking it as gospel, and then going about your merry way. No, the podcast at the end of the day is still, like this show, is still for entertainment overall. You've got to go, if you're really serious about it. This is what we did. You got to go read some stuff. Read a couple articles. It's not that hard. Start with Wikipedia. They got all the links there.
Boy, I opened up a can of worms with this particular show. I did not expect that at all. So hey, anything else, gentlemen, you want to add before we close this out? And bash poor Rob?
No, nobody's bashing Rob, but I don't care for history being slanted so you can make a show, or we can take a take on that. We got enough media that does that nonsense. CNN is already, they're already like, top 10 when it comes to this. And this right over here should be something that's easy enough to verify. Hey, who created the character? Well, let me see. Oh, says right there, Stan says it right there. It's in black and white, 1963, been published several times. Done. That's it.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. So, hey, if you like what you see, everybody, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, comment if you find this stuff, whether you like it or whether you find it controversial. Spinnerack?
Out.